Hi Anti-Society, welcome back to the Antisocial Planet, and today we are getting into the blog posts for Tower of God Part 2. Hopefully the last part. We're gonna see what happens, but we got about halfway through the blog posts for last time, so in this video we're going to be hopefully getting through the rest of them. I'm going to try and not talk about every single thing. Also, we're going to be getting closer to the end of the season stuff, so I feel like I will probably weave in more of my predictions and stuff into that because it's a little bit more applicable than a bunch of the stuff that happened at the beginning. But I'm really liking these blog posts. I like learning more about CU and like his personality and stuff like that, and also just I feel validated in my experiences as an artist and a creator through some of the struggles and things that he talks about. So let's just get into the blog posts because I have a feeling this is going to be a pretty long video as is, so let's just start reading. Okay, we ended last time where we were about to start the hide and seek game. I remember that at least. Okay, everybody, settle in, got a drink, got some snacks, because we're gonna be here a minute. Oh, we got another rant right off the bat. Okay, wow. The whole I have been wondering what I am in society, that's a little bit existential for me for the beginning of a video. I think it's interesting that he talks about how like there are lots of people who read his comic and know about it, but it doesn't really make any money, and I think that that's harsh truth of like being a creator in general, but especially with like manhwa and manga and stuff, is that it really just isn't, it doesn't make money. Like it doesn't, and you put so much work into it and it's such a labor of love, but at the same time you have to work a lot just to make decent living, and that's just the way that the manhwa and manga industry is built right now. It's sad, but it is kind of how it is, especially with digital products. You basically get paid for ad revenue. Not to like jump down the rabbit hole of creative business, but if I can for a second, as someone who works in the creative business, for something like webtoon you get paid for the ads that are on the webtoon. Now, if you've ever read a webtoon, you would notice that the ads aren't there really. They're at like the end of the chapter, and you don't get paid really for the ad to be on your comic. You get paid for people who see the ad on your comic. So if people don't scroll down all the way to the bottom where the ad is, they don't see it. And if they don't see it, you don't get paid. And you get paid a very, very small amount for something like that because it's just a banner on it, as opposed to something like YouTube, which I also have some experience with, where it's something like an actual play ad where there's like a certain amount of time that someone has to watch an ad. You get like unskippable ones, or you have to like watch the first 5 seconds of an ad. You're ensuring that someone is going to be looking at that ad for 5 seconds, and that's why you get like actually paid for that. Now, how much you get paid on YouTube ads is kind of convoluted and complicated, but it's, you know, it's different if you can ensure, but like, yeah, someone is definitely going to look at this ad for 5 seconds, as opposed to a webtoon where it's like maybe someone's gonna look at it, and then when you really get paid is if somebody clicks on the ad, and you get paid like per someone actually going to whatever site or service is being advertised. So you really don't get paid for something like that, as opposed to like traditional media where you get paid a certain like upfront amount from the publishing company, and then you might get paid a commission. It depends on what your contract is. You might get paid like upfront, and then when the publication is like done and actually goes to publish, you get paid like the second half, and that's it. Or you get commissions, which means that you get paid a certain percentage after like other deductibles and stuff. So I don't know, it's easier to get money up front in traditional media than in like digital online, but you do have the capability of reaching more people, so it might balance out. It's very, very complicated. But that's my kind of brief rant about what it is like to be a creative making money. It's a lot, and I feel like people don't really know. I know I didn't when I started. I had to kind of look through a lot of stuff to kind of figure out what was going on. It totally makes sense though that he's like, a lot of people read his comic, but he doesn't really make any money, and it's just because that's like how digital media works. People just don't get paid really for it. I like kind of the contrast though of him saying like he's someone who draws to get paid, and I feel like a lot of people are nervous about saying that, especially with something like an art form where people say like, oh, you should do it because you have the passion for it. And like, yeah, you need to have a passion for it. You're not going to be spending like 16-hour days working on something if you don't have passion for it, or you're going to be miserable. You might pull through for like a few days, but you're not going to do it for months and years on end without passion for it. But also, if you can't get paid for it, then you can't spend 16-hour days working on something. So it's kind of this weird balance of needing to have enough passion to like actually enjoy the work and want to keep coming back to it, not just like get frustrated and leave. Because like I said, it's hard to make money at first, but then you need to get paid for it. And then him talking about how he feels like his work isn't enough to earn like the attention that it's got, because you also have like the platform that it was on. And you know, he's talking about Naver, but it's also like Webtoon has its own like search engines and ways of recommending stuff to people, and people go to Webtoon because they like Webtoon, and then they find stuff that way. You know, again, as someone who makes things on YouTube, I understand the crisis of, I don't know, is it because what you make is good enough, or is it because you were on a certain platform that has a lot of attention? Or even like something like me, where it's like, do people like my videos, or do they like the stuff that I am talking about? Like, do they like Tower of God and that's why they're paying attention to me? Is that because my video is good, or do they watch everything that's Tower of God related? It does become a bit of a crisis of you just being like, oh no, what if it isn't me? But I mean, luckily I do get very nice comments of people talking about how they like my videos. I like to screenshot them because I know that I'm going to have a day where I read a comment that I don't enjoy, or I'm just having one of those days where I'm going through a crisis of imposter syndrome and feeling like I'm not good enough, and then I get to go and be like, no, I have this little file of screenshots of people saying nice things, and I just feel better. Is that like self-aggrandizing? Maybe, but it works. Ooh, fun facts about this game. Yes, please. Light bearers are very important. They seem to be quite kind of like a wild card. Oh my gosh, there's like a whole breakdown of the different positions. Ah yes, all of the background on the game. I remember the hide and seek game. I did like that they kind of broke up the positions, so it was kind of even, but it was like teaching them that they have to be able to work with other kinds of specialties and stuff, especially something like a light bearer where they have to kind of coordinate things. So if they can't work with people who have lots of different diverse talents and like differing skill levels and differing power levels, if they can adapt to that, then it's going to really mess up their capability of like actually helping to coordinate and keep everything kind of organized. So I really liked that we got them kind of placed into other teams instead of letting them choose them, or like sticking to teams that they've already been with, because they had to adapt really quickly. And it was this kind of weird thing of you could win independently if you like did a really good job as an individual in the round, or you could do really well if you like worked with the team and your entire team won. So it was like this weird thing of do you choose to work with the people around you, or do you go solo, and like how does that work? And kind of with someone like a light bearer, it's really hard to showcase who you are independent of the group, because your ability is based so much on like how you can coordinate and strategize with other people, as opposed to someone like a fisherman who can kind of go rogue like we saw, and or like spear bearers can kind of go off and do their own thing, and it would be a lot different from like a light bearer trying to portray their abilities to a high enough degree that they would pass even if their team lost independently, right? Oh no, he made a post about having family problems. I feel like I'm going through like little moments of like feeling really sad for him, between like feeling ill, going through like health problems, and then the like car accident, and then family problems. I feel like I know that it's probably fine now, like it's probably already been dealt with and he's gone through it all, but still. I like all of the kind of breakdown of the different positions of like saying like in certain contexts these two positions against each other, one will have the upper hand, because I think it's easy to kind of look at like wave controllers and be like, they're probably the most powerful. But then you have circumstances where other positions are, you know, better at certain things. Like it isn't necessarily that one position is like, there's like an inherent hierarchy of the positions in terms of like power and ability. It really has to do with how much experience do they have? How good are they at their certain position and their certain skill set? What is like the situation? Like they're saying a spear bearer will be in trouble at close range against a scout, you know, whereas like at a distance, spear bearer is going to have a better advantage. So it's also like situational, and I like how it all kind of balances out. Of course, wave controllers are kind of different breed than some of the other positions, but if they don't have the experience, or they can only control like a small portion of Shinsu, like we saw with even Bomb, if I can talk about season end stuff, where like he couldn't do two things at once, right? Like he couldn't freeze his opponent and attack. So it was kind of like this weird choice of him trying to decide how to navigate that. So against a really skilled fighter, a wave controller that can't switch or like do two things at once is going to be at a huge disadvantage at like close range. So I like that the positions all have their own advantages and skill set and situations where they excel, and it's kind of like this balance balance between all of them. I like talking about how it's rare for fishermen to be able to use both like a reel and a needle. I mean, of course, like Anak and Dorsey are just like acing that, but it's like there's ways to kind of counteract some of those disadvantages within the positions. It's just a matter of like how much like natural talent do they have? Can they control Shinsu? How much experience do they have? How much training? And obviously at this point, they were all very new to their skill set. Yeah, they had gone through the courses, like doing their classes and stuff, but they're still new to their positions. They had like what, like a month that they were training or something. It's still not going to level up to someone who has like years of experience working on their particular position and skill set and things like that. So I'm excited that we're getting kind of these hints at like what those different positions are like capable of, because I'm sure that we're going to get to those, you know, like we're going to explore a bunch of that as they continue to like develop their abilities and stuff. I like how he's like, I thought people would ask how Bum was able to do this, but people are just like, comic logic. I feel like I do that sometimes. I don't think I questioned it. I think I was just like, sure, just antagonist in a comic things. I like though that he's saying like team A was like teaching, team B was like a real battle. I like the contrast of that, of being like the first battle was kind of at a disadvantage because it was trying to figure out what the test was. Like you have to go first, so you have to kind of figure things out for yourself, whereas like team B could see what was going on or like have more time to think about what their strategy was going to be. Not that they used it, but they could have. Whereas like team A was kind of like a guinea pig in it because they had to figure out in the moment and adapt and not really have anything to pull from to help them like adjust to what was going on. Plus they're the first teams. You kind of have to like story narrative structure wise, you have to explain how the test works, and we were learning about like Quant's abilities, and we were still kind of learning about the different abilities of the characters and things like that, especially some of the side characters that we didn't really follow while they were going through their classes and stuff, but whose abilities were like applied to like Kuhn's overall plan, and plan within a plan within a plan. There were a lot of layers to Team A. Boy, did Kuhn have a hidden card. I remember freaking out, and yet not the craziest reveal of the season. I was so naive. I was like, whoa, mind blown. I had no idea what was about to come. What a time. Wait, is CU saying that he is bad at complex plans? Let me stop you right there. I would like to disagree, formally. As someone who is constantly trying to keep up with what is going on in Tower of God, you're very, very good at there being lots of different layers. But the thing is, like, it isn't so much about the complexity of it, because you don't want it to be convoluted. Like, it's almost like, how do you play into the expectations of the reader and, like, kind of let them continue on the thought process they were already having as, like, this ultimate red herring, and then leave little hints of like a completely alternative path that just like gets ignored because there's like this big glaring kind of obvious story going on. It's kind of like, I think, magic tricks, as someone who used to perform magic, okay, that it's all about like, how do you manipulate someone's attention? That's what magic is. It isn't about being like super sneaky, having lots of, you know, flourish and stuff. You can have like crazy sets and pieces of equipment that you're using to pull off a certain trick, but the best ones are the really, really simple ones. And the reason is like, you have something like a deck of cards, and you're like doing simple tricks with it, but it's close-up magic, which means you're like right in front of the person that you're trying to perform this magic trick for. So they're going to be watching you really closely. You really only have your hands and the deck of cards, and that's all that they're focusing on. So it really takes skill to be able to distract them enough by focusing on a certain narrative of like how the trick is supposed to work. And that's why you kind of walk people through and you have them participate, because them picking out a card, looking at a card, you know, putting it into the deck themselves or shuffling the deck themselves, that's a huge action that they're focused on when they're not focused on you, because they're doing something themselves. So they're focused on their action, not yours. So you can like redirect their attention. And I feel like that's really what making those like complex plots is. How do you feel like the reader is participating by like figuring out the story and like feeding into what they're expecting the story to be, all the while you're doing some sleight of hand trick in the background, and you end up playing off that expectation and how like the trick is supposed to go, and you end up blowing them away. So it isn't about it being complex, it's about how do you redirect attention. I think that that's like the real magic of the like Tower of God kind of plotting and stuff, isn't that there's anything like super complex happening. It's just that you kind of get caught up in other things going on, that you forget that like a character hasn't been in the panels for a while, or that we got that bit of information but it was kind of thrown in between other pieces of dialogue, and if you weren't paying attention, then maybe you missed it or you dismissed it because you weren't looking for that piece of information. You were looking for the information that confirmed what you already thought was happening. So it's lots of different things to kind of feed into what people are expecting, right? Oh, is this when we're talking about how, because saying like the like A rank pocket, I'm like, isn't that what Bomb has? Bomb got like a really high ranked one because he got it from Evan. Yeah, I remember Evan being like, I don't have anything for like a low rank regular because they weren't expecting to run into anyone. So Evan's like, all I have is this like A ranked pocket, but I guess you can have it because you need one. And then just they never replaced it. I think he just has a really high ranked one, which I guess is another way that like Bomb kind of stood out. Like he showed up with Black March and a high ranking pocket and they're just like, who are you? I like wish to give something better than lame jokes. You and me both. I do like that he's kind of talking about how there's a difference between like working on a story and publishing a story, especially if you're doing something in like a serial fashion where you're like releasing stuff on a regular basis, because it's like I was saying before, you can't like write the whole thing and then go back and edit it and make it seem like you knew what you were doing the whole time, and you can fix pacing and make sure that you're foreshadowing things you actually want to foreshadow and stuff like that. Whereas like when you're releasing it, when you've made maybe a handful of chapters ahead, if that, it's a different format because you're trying to continue to be entertaining. You don't want to slow down too much, but you also like don't really know fully what your pacing needs to be because you don't have the big picture fully done. You might have like an outline, but that's not the same as like actually sitting down and drawing something. So it would be really, really tricky. I have not done something that's like week to week ever. I've always been able to like sit down and do like a whole piece of work, whether that's writing or comics or stuff like that. So I don't fully know the experience of it, but I can guess how stressful it would be. I do like, he's like, unlike Team A, Team B looked shaky from the beginning. I agree. Team A was almost like a well-oiled machine. There was a plan, everyone had a task and a part to play, and they all agreed that they were going to like be a team and win as a team. And Team B was like every man for themselves. Team B was like, I owe you nothing. And everyone was just doing their own thing and switching sides partway through, going after each other. It was a mess from the very, very beginning. And somehow it worked out okay. It's true, they were all lied to by Kun, which I guess is like also part of the plan. It's complicated. Yeah, I think it is hard to say like who did better, Team A or Team B, because it would really depend on like what you're trying to measure qualifies as like better, right? Is it working together and strategizing? Is it showing off particular talents for each of the members? Is it winning the test overall? Is it having the most people who ended up passing and continuing on in the tower? I don't know. I don't know what the best would really qualify as because they're so different. And I think that's why I liked it, because we were repeating the test with Team B. It was the same setup, but completely different feeling to the two tests, which I think says a lot about the writing. If I can just get rid of some of the worries of CU for a second, but the fact that they're literally going through the same thing, but there's a very, very different feeling to them, and it's a very different experience, and it takes advantage of different like weak points in the test and with quant and everything, that they're so hard to compare because they're so different that I really don't know who did better. I mean, I think Team A was better at being a team. Maybe because they were like betrayed with Kun just lying to them. So maybe they weren't good at being a team. I don't know. There was a lot of betrayals during the hide and seek test. When I woke up, I wondered if yesterday's me was crazy. I feel that. People who are like, I plan out my day the evening before. I can't do that because I don't know what I'm gonna wake up as the next day. I'm like, am I gonna wake up and be like, yeah, let's do things, and I'll like be super productive and I'll get a bunch of stuff done? Or am I gonna wake up and just go, nope, we're gonna have to take things extremely slow and I'm going to have to be rewarded with cookies, you know? So I can't plan my stuff out far in advance because productive me, like beached whale me, are very different. So I do frequently look at yesterday's me and wonder why, how. Yesterday I had a huge nope day. I was like not doing anything, didn't want to, wasn't having it. Whereas like today, I'm in a great mood. So you never know. Yeah, where he's talking about like the hardest thing is like, it is like this weird thing with like creative energy, which sounds very wishy-washy, but hear me out. I know for me anyway, I am either hyper focused on something, like a drawing, and I will sit down for like 12, 14 hours straight working on like a painting or drawing or something, or I haven't drawn in weeks and I kind of don't have a good in between, and I probably should. And I'm sure that if I had more structure, like I don't do any art commissions and stuff anymore. I don't do drawings and paintings and stuff as like a job, so I don't need to sit down and draw stuff for long periods of time anymore. So there's like really no structure, and it's like you get super inspired to work on something and you spend a bunch of time working on it and you skip sleep, and you get to the point where, like, I don't know, you're not really a person anymore because you've forgotten to do things like sleeping and eating and being hydrated and stuff, and then you kind of come out of it and you like leave your art for like a really long time. It's like huge spurts where you get it all out of your system. So I'm sure that if I remember back to having to draw on a regular basis for a living, it does kind of like sap it out of you. Like I remember even when I was teaching art, I didn't really draw for myself because all of it was coming through like working on stuff and coming up with new projects and working through lessons. So I didn't really feel the need. It's the same with like writing, because I write now. Seems like a weird sentence because write has multiple meanings. Writing is my job now. So I write every day for like a paycheck, and I don't write for fun really because all of that writing energy goes into like my job. So it's a weird thing. The hardest part is definitely like finding a balance, setting boundaries of like how much you're actually working so that you don't kind of get like sucked into it and then you spend all of your energy and you can't really recover from it. And it's hard when you don't have ideas, like, and you have to do it. And you're like, I don't know, like, I don't know what to write anymore, or I don't know what to draw anymore. I had that all the time with teaching, where it was just like, you would run out of things to teach, or you would just try to like find new ways of like teaching the same lesson, because you would teach the same lesson like 5 times a day, multiple days a week. And it'd be like, how do I make this so it isn't the most boring thing? Because if I look like I'm bored, my students are going to be bored. So I have to like be enthusiastic about teaching this thing for like the 50th time. Everything's complicated when it's a job, isn't it? When it's just a passion, you can just do it whenever it, you know, feels right. But when it's a job, you go through like so many ups and downs of it where it's like amazing and you're super into it, and then other times where you're just like desperately trying to get through the work that you need to work on. You know, that is a good description of like changing the story's mood from like warm and happy to betrayal and plots and all that kind of thing. Like that is really what it felt like. It was like this difference between like being friends and deciding to like work together and protect each other and stuff, and then it was like betrayals and plotting and action and Dorsey just like going after people and like switching back and forth. And we had all of these stories of people going through like their own past hardships and what motivates them, and them feeling like they don't have what it takes and all of these things. Oh, is this when Hots was getting beat up by Quant? He got beat up a lot. He kind of like didn't get to really participate all that much, and I felt bad. I mean, Bum and Hots are very similar, aren't they? They have kind of like a similar, I don't know, passion. Like they kind of know very strongly what they want and they're willing to do pretty much anything to get it. But I feel like Hots is a little bit more, I don't know, active, less concerned with pleasing others. I feel like Hots doesn't care if people like him or don't want him around, whereas like Bomb wants people to be around him. He like one of his biggest fears is being alone for obvious reasons, whereas I feel like Hots wouldn't mind as long as he could like accomplish what he wanted to accomplish. Whereas like, you know, going through the tower, he needs friends, he needs a team, he needs people who can back him up. So he has friends and people who can back him up. So it's a bit of a different feeling in that regard. Ah, so that's why Bomb wanted? I mean, partly because Bomb wants Dorsey to be his friend, but also because he said Rachel. Did I catch that? I don't think I did. I think I just thought it was just Michelle Light. I mean, we always knew that Bomb knew that Michelle Light and Rachel were the same person. He's not blind. She still looks the same. It's like in every, like, I don't know, Switch thing though. I always think Aladdin, the big example where it's like Jasmine just didn't recognize Aladdin. And I'm like, why? He just changed clothes. People do that all the time. So is this one of the times when he had to do like the training thing where he was like in reserve? There was a time when Anak was full human? Madness. The description of like Rachel wants to climb the tower, a place where people hurt each other. I feel like that is such a, I don't know, gut-wrenching kind of description of it because it's accurate. You know, when people are going after what they want and it's like what like truest desires, right? Like it isn't simple wants. You can't survive the tower without truly being driven for what you're going for. And I talked about this a little bit with Rachel and her not being willing to do the little test that Hedon asked her to do against the eel at the beginning of her tower journey. I was like, well, if she isn't willing to risk her life for something she says she wants, which is getting to the top of the tower, seeing the stars and all that, maybe she doesn't want it enough to be in the tower, because the tower really is, are you willing to put your life on the line for the thing that you desire? And if you're willing to sacrifice your life for it, you're willing to sacrifice a lot of other things, including relationships and people trusting you and all of that. So I think it is a place that inherently people hurt each other, because it does kind of, I don't know, it's probably easier in some ways to do it solo. I think there's something to be said for getting help from people, but you know, if you desire something so strongly, unless someone else has like the exact same desire you do, eventually your paths are going to separate and you're going to have to do your own thing, because it's such a like specific passion I feel like people have for going up the tower, as opposed to something a little bit more generic where maybe it's close enough to each other that you can end up working together. But I also feel like the tower thrives on like manipulating people's desires and motivations. So I feel like the moment that the tower sees that someone cares for someone else, trusts someone else, they, I don't know, want to play with that. And I feel like play is like the best word for it, because that seems to be kind of how it's been, where, you know, we even had like Ho, if we're going to talk about Ho's story a little bit, what's currently going on in these chapters, we had Ren, who like saw Ho's desires and knew part of like what motivated him, but also like weaknesses of Ho, and just kind of pulled those threads, right, to make Ho behave in a certain way. So I mean, maybe that says more about who Ren is, but I feel like Ren isn't like an anomaly in the tower. I feel like that's pretty much how most of them are. I feel like you don't become a ranker, you don't survive the tower and continue to exist in that world without, you know, being willing to manipulate people for your own gain and to get what you want. It's a very specific kind of person who is able to make it through the tower and exist in that world. I guess Ho did talk about how like things are unfair, and it's very similar to like what Rachel ends up talking about when we got like the flashback of her entering the tower, where she was talking about how like she shouldn't have to risk her life for maybe going up the tower. Like it was unfair for that to be the test that she had to even be allowed in the tower, which is like a very similar thing to Ho, where he was like talking about how it's unfair that Bomb is just naturally talented. Again, talking about someone who's just more powerful, you know, special, has something else about them just inherently, and how that's unfair. And it is, but that's also just how things work. People are just born with specific talents. They're born into specific places and families and economic situations. There's always unfair things that people are just born with. So it's almost like this transition from like childhood into being an adult, because I feel like we want to believe that the world is fair, and we learn so much about like good morals and things like that when you're a kid, because people want you to understand fairness and sharing and being kind to people and things like that. So like when you're a kid, you kind of believe a lot of that is being like inherently true, and then you grow up and you realize that it's a great little like bubble to kind of put children in and to exist in, but it's not the real world. And once you have to exist in that world where you don't have a bunch of people to protect you, you can see the unfair advantages. And I feel like that's kind of the difference between people who have like grown up in the tower and have grown up going through a lot of this, because you never see like Kun talking about how things should be fair for him. He's always just like, yeah, no, the world's unfair. Same with Endorsi. She's just like, yeah, there's unfair stuff happens all the time. Whereas then you have someone like Rachel and Ho, who grew up kind of separate from that world, especially Rachel, who have this starry-eyed version of what they want life to be and what the tower is and all that kind of stuff and who they could be in that world. And they see it and it isn't what they wanted. So it's kind of this transition between, you know, what your kind of dream and vision is for what it's going to be when you're like an adult and going into the world and what you think it should be, and then what it actually is, which is usually not up to par with what you thought it would be. Maybe I'm cynical. I'm willing to accept that I'm slightly more cynical than perhaps I should be. So he was talking about like the gap between potential and dreams. Yeah, that's kind of like what I was talking about, where it's like you have an idea of what the tower is going to be or what your life is going to be, and then you're like actually in it and you're like, oh no, this is like, there's like a huge gap between like what you envisioned for yourself and then what it is. Maybe I'm just cynical because like I was promised get into my 20s, I would graduate and 20s would be great and I would like be able to explore the world and stuff, and I graduated in 2020, so I am cynical about everything when it comes to like, this is what being an adult is gonna be like, because my experience was slightly anticlimactic but also stressful. So maybe that's where I'm coming from. Ooh, 50th chapter though, big accomplishment. I say again, like you can hear me, I just want to pretend, you know? It's like when I get angry at fictional characters and I tell them not to do things and they don't listen to me, but I still want to feel like I'm participating. There's so much in this of him like being worried that it's going to be slow, which I think is cute, but I think that's also like something that you feel again when it's like a week-to-week release is that you want to make it exciting enough that like something important happens each chapter and that people want to come back, but you don't want to like rush through things too much. But I literally am always sad when I get to the end of a chapter of Tower of God because I'm usually like, why are we ending here? I need more. So he did well. You shouldn't be so stressed. Oh boy. End of season 1. Was that a ride? It's like a weird thing being someone who is both like a creator and a fan to like read through some of the self-doubt and stuff that C is going through that I'm like, I understand from a creative standpoint of being very self-critical and not liking something and going back and feeling like you can improve and things like that. But then like as a fan of Tower of God, I'm like, what are you talking about? It was great. I feel like defensive and like I want to comfort him, but then as like someone who makes stuff, I'm like, I totally understand what this feeling is because I'm the same way. I will never ever be happy with something that I make. There's always like a brief moment when I'm drawing or painting something where I'm like, yes, this is going to be amazing. And there's always this wonderful, happy adrenaline that kicks in. And then when I actually finish it, I'm already mad at it. So I understand, but also I just want to like give him a hug and tell him he did a good job. Hey, first anniversary. But yeah, no, talking about how like Bomb and Dorsey together against like Shinsu-less Quant was like still something that Quant was gonna win. I think is so important for like understanding where rankers like sit in the hierarchy of power levels that yeah, no, Quant was definitely gonna win that fight against both of them not using Shinsu. And like the only reason they won is because they like found a weak point in the game's rules. So they have so much growth to go through. But yes, ranker versus ranker, I want to see like a serious fight of that. We've seen little hints. We've seen like little moments where like a fight almost happens. I want to see a full out brawl though, someday. Aw, why is it kind of sad that he says like, I can't write a hopeful, bright story? I mean, I understand. I tend to write quite dark stories too. Was this, oh my god, Chibi Rock? I love Chibi Rock. I like that he's like, so many people skip a wall of text, and here I am spending hours reading all of these blog posts. Clearly, I do the reading. I will read everything, okay? I like epic fantasy series. I will read thousands of pages. Things that aren't really important, just because what if there is something important? I like to use the confidence of like, I will do it. You know, I'm gonna try this anyway, even though it might be hard or it might be weird. And then he's like, and I rewrote it 4 times. Like, I get that feeling where you're like, yes, I'm gonna pull this off. It's gonna be such a good idea. And then it's one thing to have a good idea, and it's another to like actually execute that good idea. So sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. I also wanted to see Hung Sung fight against Ren. We kind of sort of a little bit saw it, but I also just find a lot of joy at the thought of somebody fighting Ren and someone who like I think is definitely gonna win, and I feel like Hung Sung definitely would. I guess yeah, that is like a tricky thing because it's one thing to read through the blog post and it's like things that I already know like in retrospect, reading these later, and also like getting comments from people on my videos kind of further explaining things that some of the explanations in the blog I'm like, I don't really need these because it was in the story and in comments and stuff like that. I have to like remember that it was in the blog posts first. So I totally get him talking about how you try to like incorporate explanation and like enough information that people can follow what's happening, but you don't want to have a wall of text as he described it. Especially in a comic, it's really hard because it is a very visual medium. So you can't just like have a paragraph that explains something like you can in a novel. You have to be able to show it in some way. There has to be some kind of interesting visual that's happening with it. So it's a really hard balance to like actually have characters talking about certain things. But I feel like Hung Sung kind of works really well for that because Hung Sung isn't going to tell you everything. He's going to give you like just enough for you to respond in a way that works for his plan. So I feel like Hung Sung kind of is a great way of getting information across because you have an excuse to be kind of secretive and have like multiple meanings to things that are being said just because of who Hung Sung is. As opposed to like if you're going to have someone like, I don't know, Shibitsu explain something, he's a very like straightforward kind of person. He has his secrets, but if he's going to talk about something, he's just going to say it really plain and there aren't going to be like a bunch of layers and deception in it. He's just going to say the thing. So he's good for like really fast explanations, right? We've had a couple of times where he's talked about like, it was like farming and stuff that he knew about with the like tunnels and stuff with the worms, where it's just like quick information to the point. It's really easy to just like give that information and move on. Whereas like when you're trying to explain more like complex things, I feel like having a character like Hung Sung really works because you aren't going to get everything and you know you're not going to get everything. So it's kind of a good plot device for, you know, someone who knows a lot and is like a credible person to get, at least, I was like, credible person to get information from, like maybe not, Hong Sung might lie, but at least you know that he knows things, whether or not he's sharing them. It's not like someone who is ignorant trying to pretend that they know more than they do. You know, like if you had like a rock giving a huge explanation about how something worked in the tower, it would be weird. It would feel weird. It wouldn't fit with his character. And I don't know how much people would take it seriously, you know? Whereas like Hong Sung starts saying something, and even if it isn't true, you're still gonna dissect it and try to figure out what the angle is and what parts of it are true and what aren't and that kind of a thing. So I feel like Hong Sung is a really good character for giving out information without like explaining too much. People were posting length comparisons with other webtoons. Why? Who cares? It's just the amount of panels you need to tell the story. Oh, we're gonna get into some of the more intense stuff. And I'm like remembering. Ooh, yeah, the chapter without sound. That's probably, I loved that chapter. From like a narrative standpoint, I really liked the one without any dialogue, especially after a dialogue heavy moment of it being just very focused on, like I said, that kind of pause moment before everything goes crazy of just like characters trying to figure out what they're gonna do and how they're gonna do it, and like even like motivations shifting. They kind of like have this moment after the hide and seek test, after Ho dying and Rachel getting hurt. We didn't know at the moment. Everyone's kind of having to change their plans. So having a chapter where nobody's talking and they're just kind of, you just see them existing as characters and having interactions with each other, I think was a good point. I think some people might have not liked it, but I did. Yeah, Anuk and Dorsey is an interesting matchup. They're a little bit chaotic when they're together, but they did briefly work together, and I am very proud of them for that. They might not always like each other, but they can work together when they decide that is something that is beneficial for both of them. Yeah, okay, the whole thing with like the bull and Ren and the weird fish things, I'm still not over Ren. Still mad about it. I'm still freaked out by the like, I don't know, explosion of weird marine life. It's a whole thing. You get hungry when no. Okay, Ren freaks me out. Ren is one of those characters that just makes me super uneasy. You get hungry? No. Cannot relate. In this instance, Siyu and I are just like different people. I also like, I'm not a food person, so maybe that's also part of it. I know there are people out there who have a lot of opinions about food and like to explore food and things like that. I am not one of them. I will eat the same thing every day and be totally fine, because eating is mostly a chore to me. It's just something I have to accomplish. Were people like really that interested in the fact that some of the chapters were shorter? Because I'm like not that concerned. I don't know if I really noticed. Maybe because I take forever to read through stuff. I say spending another couple of hours going through these blog posts, so maybe it just didn't compute with me. Maybe if I was just reading casually, I would notice. Lizard in danger. Yes, she was. It's like Bomb and Rachel's honeymoon. I don't want to talk about it. I want to talk about it because I'm still mad about the whole Rachel thing, but I also don't want to talk about it. Imposter syndrome again. I get it though. I get like, it's so easy to like look at other people's work, and there's no way to look at your own work in an objective way. Like you cannot see it from someone else's eyes. You can only see it through someone who has been looking at it and working on it for hours on end. So like it's always going to seem worse than everybody else. You always like see things in other people's work that you wish you had in yours because it's different and you feel drawn to it. And I mean, I have that with like really vibrant colors, like people who can just use really vivid color palettes. I'm always so jealous of those people because color is not my strong point when I'm drawing things. Or even like hyperrealism. I love looking at people who can just do like extremely like photorealistic drawings and paintings and stuff. I will never ever be able to do that. Not maybe from like lack of talent. I would never get to a point where I'd be patient enough to do it. I can't imagine spending that long on every single little detail to make something look like a photo. I admire the talent. I'll never be able to do it. And sometimes when I see like my more like simplistic drawings and paintings and stuff, which are very like more like bold lines, I have more simplistic color palettes. I tend to use more like block color kind of things. And then I look at these people who can like draw incredible realistic drawings, and I'm just like, I'm inadequate. Like, why am I here? How dare I call myself an artist? So I totally understand. Like, you look at other people and you're like, wow, you like probably deserve to be making a ton of money. It's just something that you have to continue to work through, I guess. I don't think anyone ever stops being critical of their work. I'm just like, I get mad at like Vincent Van Gogh, depending on where you're from. He used to paint over his canvases because he was too poor store to like buy new ones. So like a big way of being able to see if something is like a forgery or a real Van Gogh painting is to like look through the layers of paint, and you can like see other paintings and sketches and stuff underneath it, and it's like a way of qualifying that it's one of his. But just the thought that Van Gogh, one of the most famous painters in history, would just paint over his own paintings. I'm like, my brain can't compute that as someone who's like a fan of his work, but then like as a painter, I've definitely done that. I've definitely painted over things, or just like deleted files, like digital paintings, and like not finished things. I mean, obviously he like got a lot of crap thrown at him. Well, he was an artist too, but like literally one of the artists that like artists now train how to paint like him was like, this isn't good enough, and painted over it. It was also why he had really simple color palettes. Like a lot of the time you would see like blues and yellows was because of paint. Those were the paints that he had or could make, and so those were the ones that he would just use, and he would utilize those more simplistic color palettes and try to mix colors that he could get from like only having a small set of paints, which is why he kind of has more of an abstract style from like a coloring standpoint. It's just wild to think that there's like all of these like hidden paintings, but like, you know, even the greats didn't see that in themselves. So is that what Ren's kind of the red division is for, is going after members of the Jihad or Sahard family? I would get why they would be kind of looked down on then, because they're basically, if I can like oversimplify, they're basically snitches, right? in a very like simplified, less murderous kind of way of like, if they show up, it's because somebody's done something that they shouldn't have, or they're trying to investigate something, and probably they're looking for people to make mistakes. So I totally understand not liking them. The HR department. Yeah, a little bit, I guess. I mean, I take a little bit of offense to that. My mom works in HR, and I don't know why, but she's really not her role. You know, she's an introvert, so working with people is really not her thing. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, maybe this is a far stretch, but like in gangs and stuff, there's always the group of people that are like in charge of going after people who talk, right? The ones that silence the people that need to be silent. So I feel like that's kind of what the red division of the family is, which is why nobody likes them, because you don't want to see them. You don't want to be the one that they're going after. Okay, so there's still like a military police though. Reds are, I guess, like a little bit more elite. They're a little bit more for like specific jobs. I swore a lot while drawing the animals. Yeah, I guess there were like the big kind of more like pulled out shots where there was like all of the different creatures and stuff with the like goblins and the worms and stuff. I bet that would be very time consuming, so you had to draw that. I like this thing where it's like Hong Sung is like, instead of fighting and conquering, he lets other people do it for him. Definitely. Hong Sung doesn't get his hands dirty if he doesn't have to, you know? If he can sit back and drink his coffee, let people do what they're going to do anyway, why get involved? It is similar to Kun. Kun's like that too, but Kun's like, it kind of goes through like different waves. I feel like Kun is like both the kind of person who likes to be more of the puppet master of a situation, but also I feel like he feels like he needs to prove himself in combat too. We've seen a couple of times where he does decide to fight, and he's very bold and confident with it. So I feel like in some ways he feels like he needs to show people how powerful he is as an individual, not like, you know, using other people, because it's unlike Hong Sung, he hasn't like fully established himself yet. Hong Sung doesn't need to show people how powerful he is. They know. They've heard the stories. They can, you know, feel how strong he is just by like being around him, right? He has like years of experience and confidence to pull from, whereas like Kun's still very young and people don't know. They know his family, they don't know him. So it's a very different dynamic. Similar natures though. I want a Hong Sung backstory, but I'm willing to wait. I'm sure it'll be very interesting to finally learn Hong Sung's story. Oh, I definitely believe that Hong Sung is near wherever is important. I feel like he definitely has his hand in the like more important major things going on in the tower. I don't think he could help it, you know? I feel like Hong Sung he's not the highest in the hierarchy, but he definitely wants to know what's going on. He knows a little bit of everything that's going on. Oh gosh, we're getting into the stuff with Bomb. I'm not ready. It's too fresh, you know? I know, we're just like, every once in a while we have to be like, wow, Fran is beautiful. Or like, take a moment to talk about her. She's very mysterious too. I want to learn more about her because we haven't really spent time with her. She's been very silent, kind of in the background. We're not in the background, which is a whole other thing. Off doing other things. Are the dots the fish? I'm talked about that. I'm like, the fish is like a cool effect. It looks really cool in the panels, but drawing all those lines was probably a lot of work. Yeah, I totally get how like end of season would be like exciting, because it's the thing that like even you talked about it, like he knew what the last test was going to be. Like you always have an idea of what the end of the story is going to be, end of a part, because you're like writing to that moment. So there's like all this anticipation. It's like the thing that you came up with probably first. It's one of the first things that you plot is what the like big moment is going to be. So there's all this anticipation to like get to that point where like you actually get to draw the thing that you've been planning for the longest time, but also it's like the most important. moment. So there's lots of like things happening and you have to balance it out and you want it to be really good because it's this big moment. So I totally get there being like pressure and it's like this double-edged sword of like being really, really excited to do it and like for people to read it, but then also it's a lot of work. Yes, Rachel's mysterious standing up. I'm still mad. Will I ever not be mad? I don't think so. Because I feel like y'all who've already read a bunch of Tower of God understand where I'm coming from. Just the anger and betrayal and feelings that I still have. It's too fresh. Given her name, wait, does Rachel have a meaning that I should know that has something to do with betrayal? I just got a sense. There's something about her. I was just like, I don't know. I want to know what Rachel means. Isn't there like a biblical Rachel that might be connected? Yeah, I was like with Jacob. I was like, isn't there a betrayal with Rachel in the Bible? I don't know if that's the connection. But yeah, there's Jacob who thinks he's going to be marrying Rachel and he actually marries her sister, Leah, which is like the trick. Rachel doesn't end up being the person she's supposed to be. So I guess there was double meaning to it, which is like kind of a double meaning because Rachel also refers to like purity, but then to have like there be kind of this trick behind it. I wasn't sure if making a biblical reference was the right way to go about it. We're getting into all of the things. I'm still not over the betrayal. Yeah, I know that like South Korea has like a lot of like a large Christian population and stuff like that, but I'm trying to think if there have been many biblical references. I think that was kind of my thing where I'm like, is that something that comes up in Tower of God? I mean, besides the fact that it's called Tower of God, so there's like an obvious religious connection to that one. I know I talked about it a little bit like the very beginning. I talked about some of the biblical imagery in like the first couple of chapters, now that I think about it. I didn't know that there was going to be an audio drama version of it. That would be cool. Yes, Rachel's eyes in chapter 1, which is revealed. See, I said that too. I was like, we had that whole thing where like Baum was following Rachel, but it's been the opposite the whole time. It's been Rachel trying to keep up with him, which I think is a really cool reversal of it because it completely changes the reader's perspective on what's going on by having that like kind of full circle narrative to it. I like how he's like, what's wrong with shonen? Agreed. What is wrong with it being shonen? Boy, is the relationship between Baum and Rachel more complex. It's a whole thing, you know? Yes, good job at doing all of the things, finishing season 1. I think it's interesting that he's talking about like drawing, like worries of drawing and like quality and stuff, because I have heard that the drawing style in season 2 is like noticeably different from the first season. Obviously I haven't seen it yet, but I heard that like really early on that people are like, it feels different going back to season 1 because it looks so different. Even like within season 1, there's been this shift in the style. So I'm excited to see the artwork. But that is the end of the blog posts. We made it. I really liked going through the blog posts. I do think that they kind of give some insight into like who the author is and like the process of it. There's a little bit of background. I feel like I didn't need a lot of the background in the blog posts because I got comments on my videos and it got explained a little bit during the story, but really fun to go through those. I feel like if I was gonna make predictions about the next season, I don't even know because I feel like so much of what the story has been flipped on its head. And I went a little bit into that with the like comparison of going back to Hedon's lore with like Baum from chapter 1, the first couple chapters, to like the end with Rachel, is that scene has a completely different meaning now that we've seen Rachel's side of it. And even like Rachel betraying Baum has a completely different motivation now. He's gonna have to find something else that motivates him. I feel like the easy answer, like the first answer that pops into people's head, is probably like revenge in some way. He looked pretty angry when we saw him at the end of season 1, but I don't think that that's who Baum is. I don't think revenge is where he's gonna go, but at the same time, who is he now? I don't know. I don't think he knows. I feel like we're gonna have to spend some time with Baum figuring that out. Like, who is he without Rachel? I don't think he knows, because even when, Rachel wasn't there, he was still motivated by her and his time with her and like their relationship, and now he's gonna have to completely reevaluate that and figure out who he is. And so that's why I find it really hard to like make a prediction about what's going to happen, because it is so different now. I feel like probably we're going to follow the group of regulars separate from Baum, because I don't think he'll like join them right away. I don't even know if he'll like fully be incorporated into the normal tests again, because everyone's kind of got an angle for him since he's an irregular, since he has all this ability. Everyone in the tower like kind of wants something to do with Baum, and part of the reason of going through all of this stuff is like, as we saw with Hong Sung, is that he wants people to believe that Baum is dead. So having him join into the regular test again would completely go against that, and also probably wouldn't be the best for Baum because people would know how to find him. So I feel like we're going to stick with Baum being on his own for a little while. I mean, probably with like Hwaran and like like maybe interacting with Hung Sung some more. I don't know. I really don't know. I feel like I can't make good predictions about what's gonna happen, but I'm excited. I'm excited to finally get into chapter 2, but those were the blog posts. I hope you enjoyed going through those with me, giving some of my thoughts. I don't know how many of the actual blog posts made this into it, but I had fun kind of going through it, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!